passenger side, portal seal rebuild. Already done the driver's side. Got heaps of messages from you guys, want to know how we did it, what tools we used. So this is how I did it. No special tools really, just a press, and I made up this puller here, just out of scrap steel I made, but I'll show you as we get into the build of how I made it and what it's used for. So the very first thing you're going to want to do is get your jack set up where you want it, but before you jack it up you need to loosen your wheel nuts. Not too much, but just make sure they're loose. And in your middle, the hub nuts, the hub bolts here. So they're all 17mm Allen key head. So make sure you get the impact sockets for them. Otherwise, you'll just strip and twist the others. So crack those as well. After you've cracked all of those, take your wheel off, and then we'll go through the process. So the Mog's come out with this metal brake shroud. I'm going to take mine off and leave it off. You can put them back on, but they do hold all the rocks and mud. So I just don't see the point of keeping it on there when when it's really not gonna help. So what I'm going to do is use the INOX. I'm going to spray all my bolts I don't get to now. Let the lubricant penetrate into the bolts so I can obviously undo them easier. And yeah, we'll just keep filming along, I suppose. So I just finished getting these oil brackets off. These are the ones that hold the brake shroud on, so you can obviously leave them off if you're not putting the shroud back on, but obviously leave them on if you're going to put it back on. The one thing with these brake shrouds is when you want to bleed your brakes or drain your oil and stuff, they are in the way because you can't get your spanner in there. So I do recommend taking them off because yeah, it's a bit of a pain in the neck. If you just want to do a simple brake bleed or something like that, you're going to have to pull them off, especially if your bolts for your bleeders are too tight. So yeah, anyway, we'll move on to draining the oil since we can get access now, and yeah, we'll go from there. So quick tip when draining the oil, make sure you undo the fill plug before you undo the drain plug. Once you drain the fluid out, you won't be getting any back in if you can't undo that filler plug. So quick tip, when you're just draining the oil out and going to replace the oil in it, put a white rag in the pan so you can check if you have any metal shaving coming out of it or whatnot. Then you can see, so the oil will go through the rag but the metal's going to stay on top. So yeah, just a quick tip. So I'm going to clamp off the brake line now. I've got one of these clamps here, so I'm just going to clamp the brake line off and then undo the brake line. So quick tip, go and buy yourself one of these brake clamps, that way you're not dripping fluid everywhere and you don't have to re-bleed your brake system afterwards. So right here is the brake line. I'm just going to pull the clip out, undo these, and then next step is we'll pull the calipers off. So these two are your brake caliper bolts. This top one because they're so tight, you need a breaker bar to get in there, so you will not be able to get your socket and breaker bar without hitting that. So what I do, I just turn the steering wheel either way, so I have a bit more of an opening so I can undo it, and yeah, that's how it works. So we're back for day 2. We had some camera issues yesterday, so we get back to this. We've got to pull the rotor off, so we're going to take these bolts out here, which is pretty easy. We've already cracked them loose from the start, so just undo all those. There will be a bit of weight on the last bolt, so when you loosen that all the way off, just take a bit of the weight. Yeah. You can split the two apart by taking these off too, but I don't really do that, so this is just the other way you can do it. So this bit here, you can't really see it because it's full of grease and oil and stuff, but you pull this bit of a cover off here, and there's a seal behind this, and you need to pull that seal off to be able to get this off. So you do that first, and then all these bolts here, all the way around, that allows you to take this whole front cover off. So you pull that off, and then that's where your gears are sitting in there. So yeah, we'll get to getting that off now. So when you're getting this front cover off, you just pull very slowly, because as soon as you take it out, all these roller bearings are just going to fall out. So, and do not lose them, otherwise you're stuffed. So you just got to be careful. They're definitely going to fall out, but you just got to be careful and make sure there's something under it, and just make sure you don't lose any. You'll see.
Just like that.
So we're going to get this bolt out here. This is the one that holds the small gear on. It is bloody tight. At 600 Newton meters, what you got to tighten it up to. But to loosen it, I've just got to obviously lock the gears together, so it's a bit dodgy. I'd rather a nice piece of timber, something softer, but I've got just my old light bracket that I'm going to use. I'll just wrap it up in a rag, and yeah, just wedge it in between the gears. I'll wedge it into the gears so it holds it there. Like, this is really tight, so and they have to be tight, because like like this probably hasn't been off for forever. That's why it's super tight, right?
Oh.
That's actually better than the other side.
Really? Is the other side tighter?
Anyway, so that's that bolt. Once you get that out, so once you loosen that off, here, quick tip, if that bolt ever strips, you can use, where are they? Come around this. You can actually use one of these bolts.
Which one?
One of these ones. So you can actually use one of those as a backup if you ever strip that bolt. So the next sort of step is we're going to pull this big gear off while it's up there. That's what that big puller's for. But before you do that, there are 4 bolts, like sort of carrier bolts. So they actually hold this gear into place. So you still press it in and everything, but there's a little, I don't know, but you just bolt it back on, but it holds the gear in there, and if you don't undo those, you won't get the gear off. So yeah, there's 4, just undo those. And when you put them back in, you put a bit of silicone in them because the oil will come out. So next step is we're going to pull the big gear off. To do that, I had to make a bit of a puller up. So this is it here. I just made out of scrap stuff. So, you know, something a bit solid, you know. But you use the bolts that you pulled out of that hub. So I use those 2 there. Bolt them into here. I'll show you. It's like a bit awkward to hold, but so we're now pulling the big gear off. So this is the puller I made. You can go and buy the proper tool, but it's a lot of money. And it only takes about 30 minutes to make something like this. Like, it's nothing special to it at all. So it's a pretty simple way of using it anyway. Just make sure the 2 arms are sitting flat on that. And yeah, I've got a big threaded rod through there, and as you bolt that on so it locks it all up, and all I'm doing is tightening this up. So it's just pulling the gear. That's all I'm doing. There's really nothing to it. So once the gear's almost off, there's really no way, but it's probably going to just drop on the ground. So make sure you put something under it. You can be as careful as you want, but it's a heavy gear, so it's just going to fall down. Alright, so the next step we're going to do is we're going to take this off, and then the camber. I've got the camber correction on this, so most people probably won't have that, but same way, you just got to undo these 4 bolts at the back, the 2 17s on the top, and then once you take those off, then this whole bit will come off. So this gear here, you have to press this gear out to get this one out. don't lose this shim. There's a shim that goes on top of the camber adjustment. Don't lose that. These are all the seals we'll be replacing. So that's the inner seal. This is the one that commonly leaks. So that's that one. And I have a spare just in case as well. That is the axle seal. So we still have to pull the drive shaft out, the axle out to put that in. That sits just in the back there. That bit is that one, and that's the outer seal. So a lot of people think, oh, it doesn't fit because they look way too big. So yeah. So they look way too big because you actually press. So you think normally you'd put a seal in, you know, that way in, but these ones actually go from the inside out. So once you press that out, that's when that goes in down like that way. And now what we're going to do, we're going to take that out and the gear, and we're going to go and change some seals and press some gears back into it, and then we'll bolt it back up. Step is pulling out the axle and changing the axle seal. So it's pretty easy, just slide it all the way out. This is the short side, so it's not very big. And then while this is out, just make sure all your unis are carbon joined. all that is sweet, which is, these are sweet, so yeah, but if you feel like a bit hesitant that they're not sweet, you're better off changing the 2 unis while you're in there. Otherwise you've got to do it all again if they let go. So yeah. I'm just going to use a seal pick. This is the seal here, it's full of shit, but yeah, you can just see the outline of it. So once you pick that out, then you can put the new one back in. I'm just about to put the axle seal in. I just rub a bit of the INOX MX8, use this stuff all the time, so good stuff. I just normally run it around the edge and then a little bit inside the axle, where the axle seal goes, just so it seats a bit nicer, and it's obviously not a dry fit, so we just, yeah, a bit of lube and yeah, should be sweet. So obviously got the axle back in. Now we're going to put those 4 bolts that we pulled out to hold this big gearing. We're going to put that back in. The plate that these bolt into, there is like a half moon sort of on top. Make sure that faces the top. Trying to line them up and stuff. You've got to try and get your hands underneath the gear and twist that bracket to get all the holes lined up. But this is the bolts that need Loctite and a bit of silk. So now we're going to put this the big bolt in. This is where it can end bad, like if you don't locate the axle in properly to the portal gear, or tighten this up all the way. So, come on. So, there are teeth on the axle, the flange plate on the axle, and there's like teeth grooves on the portal gear itself. So if you don't get those lined up, you can bolt it in half lined up, and obviously when you lock it in full drive, it's just going to spin, and you'll either strip all your gears out on your portals, strip the thread off the bolt if it comes loose, and yeah, you can do all sorts of damage. So it's something that you need to take your time with. The best way I've found to do it is you get your 2 hands at the back here and put your fingers on the axle plate, you push it in to this, right, and then you just keep your 1 hand on there and you give it a spin, right, and if you can't really spin this, like, because it's locked up, you can feel that it's locked up, right, and that wouldn't really push all the way in either, the flange plate, because it pushes into the seal. So if you can still spin that, it's locked up. It's not locked up, sorry. So like I can spin that now, but it's spinning the axle as well at the back, and I can feel it because it's pushed right in. So yeah. And then when you put this on, this bolt, heaps of Loctite, and 600 Newton meters is the torque you've got to put on the bolt. Make sure you do it, because these take a lot of movement, you know, this gear spinning backwards and forwards, so this can come loose. So yeah, it's just something you got to take care of when you're doing it. Like I'll keep spinning this until I'm certain that it's good, that it's right, because I'd rather not have to do this all again, you know. So I always start it off just with a ratchet, just give it a good pulling. It's the best I can say, and then now and then. If that's going in nice, and you shouldn't have any issues, but it's just you've just got to make sure, because this is the expensive part. You don't want to stuff them up. So I just look at the back. I'll give this a spin even before I torque it up and stuff. Give it a good spin. You want to look at have a look at the back. There's that's that plate that I was talking about that sits inside and sits up against the seal. Just give that a spin, and you can sort of see if it's not sitting right. So, like this looks like it's sitting right. And yeah, it is. It's running straight, not wobbling or anything. So yeah, just keep that in mind. So yeah, so I just normally get that on. Next bit is I will torque that up to the 600 Newton meters, and then I'll start putting like kingpin areas, so the camber adjuster, I'll start putting all that on after I do that, and then we'll get a blade and we'll clean all the old gasket off. And yeah. So I've locked up this gear again, like I did to get it off, exactly the same way. So now I'm just going to tighten this up so make sure it's all in. Just going to make sure this.
How do you know it goes to 600?
This will click.
Oh, okay.
So that's 600 and a little bit. Fingers crossed it doesn't come loose. Plenty of Loctite on it.
There's two.
So we're about to put the plate back on for the kingpin. So this truck has two shims. See, all the trucks will be different. Just depends, but yeah, just make sure you have the exact amount. That's all. That was in it. Because obviously the preload and stuff is already set. So
You want me to grab them?
what I'm doing now is I'm chucking the camber adjuster on. It's a little bit of a pain to get the bolts all lining up again, especially when you've got this, but this side shouldn't be too hard because you've got the two steering arms on that side, which made a pain, but this side shouldn't be too bad. So I've got a strap there. Michaela's just going to pull on that, give me some room, so I can just slide this on.
Oh my goodness, I don't even know if I can.
There you go. Alright, so we've got the camber correction in. There's a bit of a muck around, they always are, but yeah, once they slide in, just locate all your bolts first before you tighten them up, because you need to Loctite these as well. Everything pretty much Loctite. You just can't take the chance of them coming loose, so just a bit of Loctite and just get them in and tighten it up. That's pretty much it.
And then what are we doing next?
And then next we will clean all the gasket off the front, off this plate, and then we'll do the fun as part and put all those little bearings back in the holder to put back over the face of the gears. So this looks like a terrible job, which it is, but so you have two different size bearings, the smaller ones for the smaller one up here, big ones for obviously the bigger ones. But once I get all these out, I will have to replace the outer seal, which is what we're up to now. Once we do that, then the fun bit comes in, because there is a tool you can buy from Merck that hold the bearings in for when you go to sit it back over it so they don't fall out, but yet again it's pretty expensive, and I'd buy the tool if I was doing the job every day, which I'm not. But the best thing you can do is get a tacky grease like the INOX MX8 we have, and you literally just dab them all on with grease, sit them in there, push them in, and keep going all the way around. You keep going all the way around until they're all in, and then I just smear it so they stay in. But they do still come out, you know, it's like, I don't explain it, it's just a tedious sort of job. It ain't fun, because you've got silicone on the side, and you've got all these bearings you've got to try and keep in there. But we've got all these greased in, so they should stay, but they'll probably move, so don't hold me to that. But they all say to use the special stuff for the gasket, you know, the gasket maker, but this stuff, the ultra black, works a treat, so just use this. Don't go and spend all your money just on some gasket maker when you can just get this. That's super cheap or whatever. So I've obviously cleaned all the surfaces up on both ends, scraped all the old gasket off, but yeah, so you don't want to put like heaps on, because you don't want it to go into the gears when it smooshes out once it hits the surface. So you just put just enough on that it's gonna, you know, do what it needs to do.
That INOX stuff is good, eh? Oh! Oh! We're a bit touch and go here. Do you want me to get something?
Tap it with the... Hurry. Go.
Oh, woohoo!
So I'm just chucking all the bolts in, chucking the Loctite on, and then I'll tighten it all up. And let it set, let it go off. I like to let it go off overnight, just before I do anything, just to make sure it's perfect. Yeah. I don't know if you saw, but when I was putting these bearings in, they didn't move an inch because of this stuff, the INOX MX8. It's super tacky, so yeah, it held them in, made the job real easy. So yeah, I do recommend getting it. Chucking this seal in next. This sits just inside this, so yeah, it's pretty easy. You just sit it there, tap it around until you can't tap it anymore, but just make sure it's square. That's that INOX MX8 on again, and yeah, we'll tap it on. You don't want too much, just a smear. That'll work perfect. Pretty much, just like that. So they are a bit of a pain when you start them off, because they don't sit properly all the way yet. But once you get them on, get them going.
I love your hand.
So we're up to putting the rotor back on. So it's another
Tongue twister.
another heavy thing to put on. So this then.
Oh, sorry.
This bit here, these blinds, so you make sure they lock on in there as well. That is the exact same, what that looks like is exactly the same as what's on the axle. And yeah, when you have to line the gear up to the axle. Anyway, so that's the same, but bloody heavy. So anyway, if you have someone else that can put the bolts in, they're handy. But if not, it's definitely doable. So I'll probably end the video there. Just going to chuck the calipers back on and yeah, put all the brakes back together. But when you're going to obviously fill it up with oil, which I'll do tomorrow, and hopefully we won't have to bleed the brakes, but a few pumps of the pedal should bring the fluid through, so it should be sweet. That's only because we've clamped it off and haven't let any of the fluid leak out, so make sure you do that if you don't want the brakes. Tomorrow I'll fill it all up with oil, bleed it up, put the tyre on, take it for a run. So remember, this is just how I do it. I've got no workshop, literally doing it on gravel ground. Just give it a go. Like there's no problem with giving it a go, but yeah, if you have any questions or anything, just shoot us a message and I'm sure I'll be able to help you. So yeah, thanks for watching.